Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by BetterHelp.com and LittleShaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that often misleads people in narcissistic relationships, and that is that the most terrible thing about most narcissists is that they're not always terrible. It's very common to hear narcissists described as relentless monsters and evil manipulators, and they certainly can be, but they usually aren't always like that. If they were, dealing with these relationships would be much easier in many ways. For example, it would be easier to walk away from these relationships because if the person were always terrible, then there would be nothing to stay around for. It wouldn't be so confusing. You wouldn't be so conflicted. This is perhaps the most hurtful, destructive aspect of these relationships because it gives people hope. When that hope gets ripped away from you, it's brutal. The fact that narcissists are not terrible all the time can seem like evidence that things are changing or that they're getting better. It is extremely misleading because it's not the end of the problem. It's part of it. The idealize devalue cycle is a hallmark of narcissistic relationships. Idealization is a period of time where the narcissistic personality believes that the other person is perfect, or at the very least, good with virtually no bad or negative qualities. Every motive that the person has is considered good and helpful. This period or stage is characterized by love bombing, putting you on a pedestal, trying to please you, or stating that you please them, basically behaving as if the relationship and or the partner is perfect or really special. When the narcissist's idealized version of us lines up with our ego's idealized version of ourselves, the potential for damage is huge when we inevitably fall from the pedestal. Devaluation is a period of time where the narcissistic personality believes the other person is irredeemably bad, with no good qualities whatsoever. Every motive is perceived as bad and harmful. It's characterized by accusations, attacks, and abuse. When the narcissist's devalued image of us lines up with the things our ego fears are true about ourselves or might be true about ourselves, the potential for damage is enormous because these are things we already half believe or think could be true, so they're easy to internalize as facts. If someone else sees it in us, we might think to ourselves, maybe it is true. This can be extremely damaging to someone's self-image. Now, we often hear these stages or periods talked about as if they happen in a linear progression. Idealize, devalue, discard. And sometimes they do. Sometimes a discard does follow the initial period of devaluation. However, what is also common is a vacillation between idealization and devaluation without a discard, where the relationship continues with the other person being alternately devalued and idealized based on the narcissist's perception of them and really nothing else. The perception can switch depending on the narcissist's interpretation of events that actually did happen, or for no reason at all that you can really understand. It is this push-pull that is the reason these relationships can be so damaging and so difficult to leave. Not only does this create trauma bonding and addiction, if the relationship enters a period of devaluation and just stays there, people can understand that more easily than dealing with someone who is alternately loving and then cruel for what appears to be no logical reason. It's easier to forgive or look past horrible behavior when there is kind behavior to compare it against. Because the other person is blamed for the narcissist's shift in perception, people often start to believe they can somehow fix this and the relationship will be good all the time. The idea that this is not possible or even realistic doesn't ever seem to occur in this situation. They either don't realize or don't want to admit that the idealization stage is not sustainable in any relationship, no matter what, because it's not reality. We have to be able to see people as they really are and accept them. If we can't, the relationship will not work. This is what happens with narcissists. They don't see people as they truly are. Whether for good or for bad, they are only ever reacting to a fantasy image of somebody that they have created in their mind. This is what the idealization and devaluation stages are about. They are not about you as a person. They are about the narcissistic personality's inability to hold one stable, cohesive image of a person in their mind. This is why, in a very sad case of irony, they will often accuse other people of having multiple personalities or of being like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The way they perceive you has changed, and now everything you do is being viewed through that lens. Yesterday it was okay to say this. Now today it's not, because now your motive is perceived as totally different based not on how you feel, but on how they feel. It's not possible to argue with this or disprove this. As we have discussed in several episodes of the show, most recently the show entitled Narcissists and the Unfalsifiable Hypothesis, feelings are facts to a pathologically narcissistic personality. They are falling into a cognitive distortion that's called emotional reasoning, which means they believe their feelings are evidence of how things really are, even if there is no other evidence except for their feelings. I feel that you hate me, so it's a fact that you're feeling that. That's really how it is. I feel that you think I'm stupid, so it's a fact that you are thinking that. I think you're doing this. I feel that you're doing this. That means you are. Part of this kind of thinking is due to perception and cognitive biases in which the interpretation of events is faulty and skewed. Most prominent among these sort of cognitive biases in this situation would probably be confirmation bias, in which any information that doesn't validate what the person already believes is discarded, ignored, or reinterpreted to fit their perception. We can see this at work in another cognitive distortion that often goes hand in hand with emotional reasoning in narcissists, which is disqualifying the positive. When people disqualify the positive, they essentially reject evidence of positivity or positive experiences. They reject any information or experiences that reflect this, or they behave as if those don't count. It's black and white, sort of all or nothing, good or bad thinking without the good. It's a double standard in which all of the negative evidence or information counts, no matter how weak it is, but none of the positive evidence counts, no matter how strong it is. Though we certainly like it better when they are engaging in good or bad thinking without the bad, idealization, it's important to realize that this is not any better. It still isn't reality. It feels good, but it's not good for us or the relationship, and it doesn't last. As high as you go up on that pedestal, that's how far you will fall down when the crash comes, and it will come, because idealization is not sustainable. The important thing to remember is that narcissists are not usually people who are evil and horrible all the time. It can get like that, but it doesn't usually start that way. If we are only looking out for people who are evil and horrible all the time, we will be vulnerable to the many, many narcissistic personalities who don't present that way. They're not always greedy and stingy, or they're not always rude to the waiter. They don't all say hateful things to their mothers. They don't all cheat. They don't all refuse to apologize. Some do, but some don't. The ones that don't are not less narcissistic just because they don't. They have just learned different ways to behave. Many times people don't like to hear these kinds of things because it seems like it makes it more confusing and more difficult to tell who's a narcissist and who's not. But humans are complex. We're talking about the human personality. It can't really be laid out in a black and white fashion or listed like a recipe, even though that would certainly make it a lot easier. The truth is, it doesn't matter if someone is not terrible all the time. It doesn't even matter if they're a narcissist or not. What matters is if you want to deal with their behavior overall, if you feel good about the way the relationship is going and how this person treats you. If you don't, then whatever they are or are not doesn't really matter. I hope that clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. I take appointments online, over the phone, via text, via messenger, via email, and through Skype worldwide. So if you're interested in speaking with me one-on-one, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. I teach workshops, seminars, and clinics throughout the year, so if you're interested in seeing what we are running this month, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. And if you're interested in joining our support group with monthly meetings and a guaranteed spot in monthly workshops, you can do that on littleshaman.org as well. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast, brought to you by betterhelp.com and littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you. Have a wonderful day.